Picture yourself stranded. Your last clean water went 6 hours ago. Your throat is cracked and your head is beginning to ache in that particular way that tells you this is no longer discomfort. This is a clock. And in front of you is a stream, muddy, slow, alive with things your eye cannot see. Now picture reaching into your pocket and pulling out 2 little strips of metal, one copper, one zinc. You twist them together, drop them into that filthy water, and walk away. And you are told that 8 hours later, that water is cleaner than what comes out of a city tap. No filter, no battery, no electricity. 2 metals touching, doing what the earth built them to do. You will have seen this. It is everywhere now. And I'm going to tell you something before we go one step further, because I am too old to lead a man on for 20 minutes. Part of that is true. A real and ancient and astonishing part of it is true. And I'm going to show you 4,000 years of proof for it. But part of it is not true. Part of it is a lie that has crawled onto that true thing like ivy on a wall. And if you are ever truly stranded beside that stream, believing the lie is what will put you on your back for a week, wishing you were dead. So we are going to separate them, the true from the false. And by the end, you will know exactly what these 2 metals really do, exactly where they stop, and exactly what to add so that water will not hurt you. Stay with me because the interesting part is not the trick. The interesting part is how old this is. I am Romani, Roma. My people were travelers, and I will tell you why water sits so heavy with me, heavier than almost anything else I could talk to you about. On the road, water decides everything. Everything. It decides where you stop for the night and where you cannot. It decides how long you stay in a place and how far you can go tomorrow. A family with good water can rest. A family without it must move, tired or not, sick or not, in the dark if it comes to that. My people carried water, hunted for it, judged it by the smell and the look and what grew around it, argued over whose turn it was to fetch it, and buried children because of it. That is not a figure of speech. Bad water has killed more travelers over the long generations than any accident on any road ever did. And it killed them quietly, without ever once looking dangerous. So when a man tells me he has a small, clever trick that makes any water safe to drink, I do not get excited. I get careful. Very careful. Because I come from people who learned, at a price, exactly what happens when you are wrong about water. And being wrong about water does not announce itself. It waits 3 days and then it takes you apart. Now, the true part, and it is a wonder. Go back 4,000 years to the banks of the Nile. A field healer crouches beside a soldier with a spear wound opened across his thigh. And in that age, the wound is rarely what kills a man. Infection is what kills him. And infection, more often than not, comes in through the water. So the healer reaches for a vessel, not clay, not wood. Hammered copper. He fills it with river water and he sets it aside, and he does not boil it, and he adds no herbs, and he simply waits. By morning, the water has changed, clearer, a faint metallic sharpness to it. He has seen this 100 times. He cannot tell you why it happens because nobody on earth yet knows what a bacterium is. He only knows that men whose wounds he washes in copper-kept water tend to live, and men washed in plain river water tend not to. And that is not a story I am telling you. The Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents that survives from human hands, names copper for exactly this, for cleaning water and treating wounds. Now come forward to Greece, around 400 years before Christ. Hippocrates, the man they call the father of medicine, writes down copper compounds as a treatment for open wounds and for disease of the lungs. And the Greek sailors, who had a terrible problem, found something better still. Water kept in wooden barrels aboard ship went green and foul within days under that Mediterranean sun, and crews died of dysentery in numbers no enemy fleet ever managed. But water kept in copper stayed drinkable for weeks, sometimes months. They had no microscope, no notion of germs, no chemistry at all. They simply had eyes, and the pattern was too plain to argue with. Copper meant you lived, the barrel meant you might not. The Romans, being Romans, turned the observation into infrastructure. Copper piping run through their aqueducts. Copper vessels issued to the legions as standard kit, not as luxury but as equipment, carried across Europe and North Africa because their commanders understood without knowing a scrap of the science that this metal held off the sicknesses that had always killed more soldiers than swords. And I want you to sit with that for a moment because it is easy to hear the Romans used copper pipes and let it slide past as a dry fact. It was not dry to them. An army on the march lives or dies by its water, and a commander who lost a third of his men to the flux before ever reaching the enemy lost the war. So when Rome issued copper vessels to the legions as ordinary kit, the way they issued a blade, that was a hard practical decision made by men counting bodies. They did not know why it worked. They only knew what happened when they did not do it. And here is where it stops being a story about the Mediterranean and starts being something stranger. Thousands of miles west, across an ocean nobody had crossed, the Aztecs came to the same conclusion. Different continent, different language, different gods. No contact whatsoever with Greece or Rome or Egypt. And Aztec healers used copper-infused water for infections of the throat and worked it into their purification rites. In India, the Ayurvedic tradition set down that water should be kept in vessels of copper and brass, a practice called tamra jal, and that is not a dead custom in a museum, that is done today, this morning, in millions of households. 5 civilizations, 4 continents, thousands of years and an ocean between them, all arriving at the same answer without ever comparing notes. That is not a coincidence, and it is not folklore. When people that far apart, that separated, all notice the same thing, they are not sharing a superstition. They are all bumping into the same fact. The fact was simply sitting there in the world, waiting, and copper does not care what language you noticed it in. So the ancients were right. I want that said plainly, and I want it said before I start pulling anything apart, because there is a fashion now for laughing at old knowledge, and I will not have it. Those healers and sailors and engineers had no instruments and no theory, and they still got hold of something true by patient watching over centuries, and they passed it down carefully enough that it reached us. Hold on to that. We are coming to the part where the modern telling of it goes wrong, but the old people themselves were right. Now, what is actually happening in that water? Because this is where you separate the true from the ivy. Put copper and zinc together in water, touching, and you have made what they call a galvanic cell, a tiny battery named for an Italian called Galvani. And the working of it is this. Zinc is a restless metal. At the atomic level, it wants to give its electrons away. Copper is the opposite, steady, willing to take what zinc offers. So when the two touch underwater, the zinc begins shedding electrons, they flow across into the copper, and the water itself completes the circuit. And you have a small, faint, endless current running between 2 bits of scrap metal. You would never feel it. It would not light the smallest bulb. But at the scale where bacteria live, it matters. That current and the copper and zinc ions going into the water make the place hostile. Bacterial enzymes are disrupted. Algae will not take hold. This is the real mechanism under 4,000 years of observation, and it is the same reason copper doorknobs and hospital rails are made of copper alloys to this day. And it is real enough that men have built proper industry on it. In 1984, a researcher called Don Heskett dipped a brass pen into a beaker of heavily chlorinated water, and brass is copper and zinc together, and the chlorine simply went. No chemical added, no power applied. He spent 3 years on it and patented it as KDF. And that technology is real, and it is in use today in serious filters as high-purity copper-zinc media that knocks out chlorine, holds down bacteria and algae and fungus and scale, and does the dechlorination job several times better than carbon alone. And even the space program. In the 1960s, preparing for the moon, NASA needed to keep water safe inside a sealed capsule where you cannot haul filtration gear, cannot spend power boiling, and absolutely cannot put chlorine gas into air that men are breathing over and over. Their answer was a small electrolytic generator that put silver and copper ions into the water supply. The size of a cigarette packet, 9 ounces, almost no power, and it worked. So, ancient healers, Greek sailors, Roman engineers, a patented modern technology, and NASA. That is a serious pedigree, and every bit of it is real. Which is exactly why the lie gets believed. Because the lie is wrapped around all of that truth. Here is the question I want you holding now, and we are nearly at it. If all that is true, why has nobody handed you 2 bits of wire instead of a filter? And the answer is not one thing. It is partly money, and I will give the money argument its due because it is fair. The water purifier trade is worth something like $35 billion a year, and the profit in it is not the jug you buy once. It is the cartridge. Carbon cartridges saturate and expire every couple of months, so you buy the pitcher one time, and you buy cartridges forever. That is a subscription wearing the clothes of a physical object. And a thing that lasts years without replacement does not build an empire. That is not villainy, it is arithmetic, but the result on your kitchen counter is the same. But money is not the whole answer. And here is where I have to be straight with you, because a man on the internet will not. The claim going round is that you twist copper and zinc together, drop them in a canteen of stream water, wait 8 hours, and drink. And that claim is stretched past what these metals can do in 3 places, and one of those places can kill you. The first stretch. You will be told the galvanic pair pulls heavy metals out of the water. Lead, mercury, arsenic, drawn in and plated onto the metal and locked away. That is not supported. 2 twisted wires in a jar do not strip dissolved heavy metals out of water. What actually happens is that the zinc corrodes and puts zinc ions into your drink. Heavy metals come out by other means entirely, by ion exchange, by proper adsorption, by reverse osmosis, not by this. The second stretch. The real technology, the KDF, is not what you have made in your canteen. Real copper-zinc media is engineered granules with enormous surface area packed into a housing with water driven through it under flow. You have 2 wires and still water. Same metals, nothing like the same performance. It is the difference between a horse and a photograph of a horse. And the third, and this is the one that matters, this is the one I'm asking you to carry out of this video if you carry nothing else. Copper and zinc do not deal with the parasites. Giardia, Cryptosporidium. These are protozoan cysts with tough shells built to survive exactly this sort of assault, and they are famously resistant even to chlorine in proper treatment plants. They are among the leading causes of waterborne illness in the world, and they are precisely what is living in the slow, muddy stream from the beginning of this video. So consider what that means. You are stranded. You do the trick. You wait the 8 hours in good faith, and the water even looks a bit better, and you drink it with confidence. And the confidence is the poison, because the parasite is untouched. And in a few days you are somewhere with no help, losing water faster than you can find it. Bad water does not kill you by tasting bad. It kills you by tasting fine. That is the gap they do not tell you about. Not because there is a conspiracy, because a boundary makes a poorer video than a miracle. Now, let me give you what is actually worth having, because I am not in the business of taking a thing away and leaving you empty-handed. First and above everything else, above every clever thing in this entire video, boiling. If you can make a fire, you can make water safe. That is the whole of it. Bring it to a proper rolling boil, not a warm simmer, a real rolling boil. And hold it there a minute, and you have killed the bacteria. You have killed the viruses, and this is the part that matters most, you have killed the parasites too. The Giardia, the Cryptosporidium, the very cysts with the tough shells that shrug off the metals and shrug off chemicals in proper treatment plants. Heat does not care how tough the shell is. Heat gets them all. And notice what boiling costs. Nothing. It needs no shopping trip, no cartridge, no subscription, no clever wire. Nobody has ever patented it, and nobody can sell it to you. It is the single most reliable thing a human being can do to water in the field. And it has been for as long as there have been humans and fire. Every clever trick in this world, mine included, sits underneath boiling. If you remember one single line from an old man today, out of everything I have told you, let it be that one. Second, if you cannot boil, use the layers, and use them knowing what each one is for. Strain it first through cloth, a shirt, a bandana, to take out the mud and grit. That is not purifying, that is only preparing. Then, if you like, the copper and zinc, and now you know honestly what it is doing. Helping against bacteria and algae, quieting chlorine if you are dealing with treated water. That is a real benefit and worth having. It is not a license to drink from a ditch. Then charcoal, which improves taste and takes up some organic matter. And I will be honest that campfire charcoal is not the activated carbon they sell, so do not lean your life on it for chemicals or pesticides. And for the parasites, if you cannot boil, you need something that physically strains them out or chemically deals with them. A proper filter rated for cysts, or purification tablets, which are small and light and cheap, and which I would rather see in your pocket than any amount of clever wire. Let me leave you with the real lesson, and it is not about metal. My people did not survive on the road by believing the best story. We survived by knowing exactly where a thing stopped working, where the ice stopped holding, where the horse stopped being able to go on, where the water stopped being safe. A man who knows the edge of his knowledge lives. A man who thinks his one good trick covers everything walks confidently off the edge of it. The ancients were right about copper, and they were right about it for 4,000 years. And that is a marvel worth carrying with you. But they were right about what it does, not about what it does not do. What the internet has done is take a true old thing and promise it can do everything. And that promise is more dangerous than plain ignorance, because ignorance makes a man cautious, and a false promise makes him bold. The Earth did solve a great deal of this long ago, but it solved it with fire first and metal second, and it never once promised that 2 bits of wire could stand between a man and everything living in a muddy stream. So tell me down in the comments what you carry for water when you are away from a tap, and whether you have ever tried this trick yourself. And if you take nothing else, tell me you will boil it when you can. I read every one of them. Next time, I'm going to show you the old way my people found and judged good water on the road. How you read the ground and the plants and the animals to know where clean water lies before you ever taste a drop of it. Subscribe so it finds you when it comes. Until then, trust the old knowing but know exactly where it ends, and boil the water when you can.